What's going on YouTube? Thanks for tuning into the channel. Welcome to Oh So Simplified, coming to you here with a video about transurfing, how to use it to achieve your goals, achieve the reality lifeline that you want, however you want to describe it. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's just jump into this. This is coming from a book that I honestly just started reading or listening to. I bought it on audio, haven't even finished it, but has a lot of new novel types of ideas that I really just wanted to share because even in this like day and a half of listening, it's really already changed the way I'm thinking about things. I'll get it a little bit deeper into where I got the recommendation. It was from another YouTuber, Aaron Dougherty or Dougherty, just if I forget, but let's jump into the content. So, as I mentioned, I didn't finish the book, so I'm really going to just focus on three of the concepts that he's the most deeply explained so far. So the first one is going to be lifelines and alternate paths. So the first thing that he basically sets the stage upon is that reality, and this is something I've mentioned before, and this is why it was hitting me, is that it's like falling in line with things I've read but giving me new information. But basically reality and alternate realities all exist at the same time. So you can imagine this just like if you've ever read those old Goosebumps books, that on certain pages it would be like, you know, do you want to go into the door 1 or door 2? Skip to page 72 if you choose door 2, keep reading here if you choose door 1. And then there was alternate paths that all existed in the same book, but depending on your choice, you'd have a different experience throughout the book. So that's basically what he explains, that there's these lifelines, these different paths of life that you have that are already from a higher dimension, above the third dimension, so the fourth dimension, that all exist in the same time frame, that are all a possibility, that are already out there, already decided for you. So that's the first point. The way that he uses as a metaphor to describe this, why when it's a little bit hard as a human to describe, he describes like just imagine a general slope. So this is like the x-axis, the y-axis, and let's just say it's a 1 by 1. So as y goes up 1, x goes over 1, it just keeps moving up 1. So it's just a straight linear line. When we view it in the third dimension, we can see each point on the line, and even if this x was time and this was, let's say, yield of whatever unit we're counting, we literally can visualize time over the entire x-axis at one point, and it makes complete sense to us. But if we were the dot locked into 2 dimensions, it would be just as confusing to the dot to say that, you know, if time is 1, then you're 1, even though you're at time being 3 and x equal 3 and y equal 3, so you're at this 3 point. But at 1 you're 1, and then also when the time becomes 5 seconds, let's say, is the unit of measurement, at 5 seconds you'll be 5 yield. And I can see past and present at the same time on that piece of paper. That'd make no sense to the dot. That's essentially what he's saying about this idea of our life, that it isn't just one possible outcome. There's a million possible outcomes for us, all existing at the same time as far as the universe or higher dimensions is concerned. And what he describes as being different, and you also have to imagine that, and I'm going to keep humans as the main piece, but he extrapolates this all the way out to anything being conscious, even things like rocks. So that might make it a little bit more difficult, but we can keep this as humans. Also, you have to take into consideration that everybody has these different lifelines, and the way that you choose which lifeline is the behavior that you choose. So you can choose to follow a particular lifeline, and then you will get, you know, one specific reality. If you do something completely different, you'll get this other reality. They both exist at the same time, but depending on your choices, that will determine what lifeline you will fall into. Now, everybody has all of these different lifelines that are connected to them, so you're also interacting with other people's lifelines at the same time. So if, for example, you're very overweight, you start a weight loss journey, you might change your lifeline to be, you know, being more into a fitness a fitness community and things like that. That's a reality. Or you can continue on doing what you're doing, and then you become, you go to the hospital and you become into the, the diabetic cardiac arrest community. And those are two different lifelines. So as you get on your fitness journey, you might meet a fitness person that, if you keep making decisions that way, it helps steer you towards a lifeline that's conducive towards that fitness person is conducive to their lifeline. But let's say after 4 weeks you stopped working out. Maybe your relationship with that person stops, and now your lifeline goes back to, and then you start meeting other people's that lifelines basically align with the lifeline that you're moving towards. So the main concept here is that there are infinite possibility of different ways that your life can turn out, that we will use lifeline because that's what the book used, and that you're also interacting with other people's lifelines and potential lifelines. And the way that you're choosing what lifeline you're going to end up following depends on the choices that you make in your day-to-day life. Like, your power of choice is how you can actually choose your destiny, and the idea of fate. From this book, the way he's describing it is that fate isn't like just a one fate, it's multiple fates. You have an infinite number of different fates. You can choose which one that you want to be yours. So that's step one about the lifelines and alternate reality. The second piece is really like the main thing that really struck a chord with me. Actually the next two, but is this concept of pendulums. And it's a little bit hard to describe pendulum because he spent so long building it up. But to sum it up in something simple, I would say it's like a culture of something. And once again, he extrapolates this out to, animals and trees and stuff, but we'll just stick with humans. One easy pendulum to understand would be something like the pendulum of a club or the pendulum of a job. That as you work at the job, there is a culture of the job. And then the pendulum itself is like this entity that isn't any one person at the organization, but the pendulum itself has a life. And the pendulum itself also wants to survive. So what is it looking for? The pendulum is looking for energy. So people in the organization are feeding the pendulum because they all believe in it. They keep making this idea of whatever this organization, like, becoming a real thing. Everybody's acting in ways that is giving validation to this, like, really is just like an idea. There's nothing tangible you can feel, but it is conducting people's behaviors. You do feel guilty if you don't uphold the pendulum that you're in, especially if you're not aware that you're in a quote-unquote pendulum. And the way that he describes this is that there's a multitude of different pendulums all interacting with each other all at the same time. And with humans, we need to be within a pendulum. So we're in a pendulum of the nation. We all believe that, and maybe not so much in this day and age, but I would definitely say if you went 100 years before, nationalism was a huge thing, that everybody really believed there was this serious connection between you and the other people that are within the borders of a country, which are just imaginary lines. And it's also an imaginary membership, because there is no thing that you have to completely sign up. I mean, I guess there's citizen tests and things like that, but those are all just ideas to keep the pendulum alive. And his idea is that the pendulum itself is going to keep trying to pull to stay alive, and anybody that is within the pendulum also wants the pendulum to be alive because it's fueling the purpose of their life, especially if they're unaware of this concept of pendulums. So the first piece of this pendulum is that pendulums need energy in order to work and to exist. So if there's a volleyball club, if nobody wants to play volleyball, then the pendulum of the volleyball club no longer will exist, because it needs the energy of people being into it, saying, let's meet up to play volleyball, let's go to this tournament, let's go to that tournament, let's set up practice today, let's set up practice tomorrow, things of that sort. But it can obviously be terrible things, pendulums of like wars, that my religion is better than your religion, my country is better than your country, we are civilized and you guys are barbarians, and we need to bring you along to our pendulum because you guys are living like savages, things of that sort. It needs energy to survive. So when you are involved in a pendulum, we can use one like work, for example, you have, and let's say you did something that you feel like was done correctly or even incorrectly, but somebody's making you feel guilty for it, that, you know, you're not being dedicated enough to the company, so on and so forth. What the pendulum wants is your energy. It either wants you to fight back so that the pendulum can strengthen itself and say, you know, these are our rules, you know, get right or get left, or it wants you to acquiesce or submit to the pendulum. Both sides fighting it and traditionally submitting to it, basically saying, you know, you're right, I should feel guilty, I feel bad, I'm going to put a battery in my own back that helps me reinforce this pendulum, even though all of this doesn't really exist. And one of the main things that the book tries to talk about is that these pendulums are generally what's driving you away from the lifeline that you want to choose. That you're so involved in something that is imaginary that you're not attuned to the choices that you truly have. So somebody that says, I have to do this, or I have to go to that place, I have to go to work, I have to meet these people, I have to show up to this committee organization, they're all trapped in the pendulum because you have the choice to do it or not. Now, he does make the case that at the end of the day, the way human society works is what keeps us together are all of these pendulums. So you have to decide what pendulums you will be a part of, but the awareness that you are not the pendulum. You're always making a choice to either feed it, or if you want to stop it, the thing you can do is just ignore it. Because if you ignore it, the pendulum needs energy. So if you're just indifferent, the pendulum is going to either try to like kick you out, depending on how violent it is and how large it is and how many people, it might even try to kill you and do other things like that. I mean, you've heard of anything like people being traitors, snitches get stitches, things like that. Like, I mean, there's plenty of examples of harm when you try to get out of a particular pendulum, especially when you're too deep into it. But the main thing he tries to get across is that you need to be aware of, one, what a pendulum is, when a pendulum is trying to provoke you to give it energy, and then also deciding on the least destructive pendulums that you'd want to be part of, because he does make the assertion that all pendulums in essence are destructive, because all pendulums are just out for its own self-preservation. It has no interest in the individual itself. It's just after its own self-preservation, and the moment that you're stop feeding it, the pendulum itself is going to discard you and get rid of you and look for other ways to get that energy, because that's what's going to keep it alive. So it's choosing the ones that are the least destructive, being aware of when you're being provoked by a particular pendulum, and then also when you're part in a pendulum that you don't want to be in or have to be in for some period of time, because obviously we live in the real world. Like, you can't just like quit your job and say, I don't want to be part of this pendulum. That doesn't make sense. That number one, you can ignore it. And then two, if you have to be in a situation like a job, what you do is you just do your work to the best of your ability, but keep that level of detachment that you are not your work. I'm not going to get wrapped up in this beyond what I'm brought here to do. I'm here to do the job, do my work, get paid, not be all enmeshed in all of the different highs and lows that have really no concern for you as an individual. So that's the pendulums piece. The next piece is going to be about expectation and potential, and is actually going to be the last piece. And I'll probably have future videos on this, because this book really opened my eyes to a few different things. So expectation and potential. So this is another book that really focuses on that concept of like what you focus on will happen to a capacity. So that doesn't mean that like if you just focus on your goals, that you're inevitably gonna be rich, but it does say that something of the universe is going to balance out the thing you're focusing on. Generally, when people focus on, we're using money as the idea, generally when people are focusing on money, they're actually focusing on the lack of money, so that's coming true. But what he explains is this idea of expectation and potential. So when you have a particular goal, something you want, we'll just keep using money. Let's say you want to make a lot of money and you put a lot of expectation. If I make a lot of money, I'm going to be super happy. If I don't make a lot of money, I'm going to be miserable and depressed. That, you put a ton of expectation on it. He explains that when you put a lot of expectation on something, there's two things that you can do. One is you can take action towards making that happen, and then two, you can do nothing. If you do nothing, the expectation, the way it's going to work is that the universe has to balance things out. So since you put so much expectation on something and so much mental energy towards it, the universe has to respond. And he talks about this as potential, such as, I'll just grab something, a prop. That, like, if I hold this in the air, there is potential energy in this headphone case. Because if I were to drop it, that energy will be released. But me holding it up is the potential energy. That's the idea of you putting expectation on something. When you put a heavy expectation on it, and there's two pieces. One, the expectation is also showing the lack, because you're basically saying, I'm at this point and I don't have it. So the universe feels like I need to balance this out, and the way to balance this out is to bring it back down, just like gravity. So when you put way too much focus on something, way too much expectation on something, and saying, I'm going to sacrifice everything to make this thing work, a lot of times the universe is actually going to bring it down, because that's the universe's way of finding equilibrium to that unstable potential. Now, the other way that you can reduce it is by taking action towards the goal, which will move you towards that lifeline, which also can alleviate the potential as well. So one big point here is that you want to take action towards your goals. But one thing he makes very clear is that you want to do things in tune with the way that nature does things. And if you observe nature in terms of the way it works and things that actually just move with the ebbs and flows of the seasons and things of that sort, nature is never hurried, and it's never late. It's never in a rush, and it's never like dragging behind. It's always moving at a very, lack of a better word, natural pace, and a very spontaneous pace. And that should be the way that you move towards your goals, because anything else of the sort subconsciously means you don't think it's going to happen. And that was such a mental shift for me, because everything that's I've really gotten in my life, it's like one of two things. It's either been super easy, or if it's been hard. And then he also explains this as like fighting against the world and fighting against the current and not going with the flow of things. That it was a fight, but it wasn't like a fight for the actual goal. It was a fight for all of these like weird things that popped up around it that made it more effortful than it really needed to be if it was just the A and B of achieving something. And that's a big piece that he talks about, is that you need to approach the things you really want, not with indifference, but the same way you go to McDonald's and order, a junior cheeseburger. If you ever went to McDonald's, everybody went there, and I think I got it wrong, because junior cheeseburger is Wendy's. Yeah, I eat a lot of fast food. But lack of a better way of describing, when you go to the cashier to order your food, you're not nervous. You're not confused. You think it's gonna happen. You don't go and plan for freaking 10 hours saying, I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna say that and I'm gonna say this. And if they say do you want the 4-piece or the 6-piece nuggets, you don't get all flabber. I didn't think of it. This is a new a new freaking variable. I don't know what to do. Like, there is a very easygoing, spontaneous way that if there's a funny instance that happens while you're ordering, you laugh with the cashier. You know, it's simple. It's 1, 2, 3. And that should be the way that you approach your goals or the things that you really want in life, is with this almost nonchalant, I know it's going to happen point of view, because that is the way that actually nature works. And when you see people that are brave, that are confident, they don't have all of these other fears and guilt. And a lot of it is guilt that is coming into your head. And you have to read the book because he really goes deep into how guilt is a big piece of this. But you're doing it in a natural way, the way that nature would do it as well. So that's really it for this one. I just really thought this Transurfing book was very interesting. It's by some guy named Vedim something. So if you want to look it up, I'll probably put it in the description just so it's in there. But that's it for this one. As always, I'm looking to add some more things to this channel and the other channels I'm creating, but going in the midst of some things in my personal and career life that I need to work out as well on the back end, but not forgetting about you guys. But enough with this one. If you like the content, like, comment, subscribe. If you didn't like it, dislike, leave some negative comments. Any feedback will do. And y'all know what it is. Until next time, peace.